What if the very talent you'd hidden away, the one you barely acknowledged, was the only thing standing between a billionaire's insatiable hunger and his next ruthless acquisition? He'd scoffed, a sound like ice cracking. He'd tossed out a figure, $10 million, as if it were pocket change, a mere jest. "I'll give you 10 million if you can even try to decipher this," he'd sneered, his eyes glinting with condescension. But Amelia Vance, the shy waitress earning barely enough to keep her afloat, was about to do far more than just translate. She would decode his arrogance, peel back the layers of a clandestine conspiracy, and in the span of one unforgettable night, she wouldn't just silence him, she'd checkmate him, leaving him utterly defeated on the chessboard of power. This is the improbable story of how a single, seemingly innocuous sentence transformed a quiet waitress into a queen, a force to be reckoned with. Stay tuned, because the twists and turns that lie ahead will leave you breathless. The heavy, almost suffocating scent of truffle oil and the cloying aroma of old money hung in the air at La Walder, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. It was an olfactory assault Amelia Vance had never quite managed to get used to, even after 6 long months of painstakingly balancing impossibly heavy, $300 plates on her slender arms. In this world, she was a ghost, meticulously trained to be invisible, utterly silent, and ruthlessly efficient. Her starched black waistcoat was impeccably clean, her white apron pristine, and her expression carefully cultivated to be as neutral and unreadable as possible. But behind those quiet, hazel eyes, a brilliant, restless mind was slowly drowning in a rising tide of student debt and mounting family medical bills. Amelia wasn't just shy. She was fundamentally introverted. She was a creature of hushed libraries and crowded lecture halls, not the cutthroat Shark Tank that was New York's elite social scene. She'd been at the very top of her class, a promising doctoral candidate in paleography and historical linguistics at Columbia University, specializing in the intricate world of pre-romantic ciphers and forgotten languages. Then, suddenly, her younger sister, Clara, had fallen desperately ill. The PhD was abruptly abandoned, and the already daunting mountain of debt quickly became a terrifying avalanche, threatening to bury her. Now, instead of deciphering ancient texts, she served men who wielded words like acquisition and leverage as weapons of financial warfare. Tonight, those weapons were being brandished with particular ferocity at Table 7, the restaurant's most exclusive alcove, a space reserved for the truly powerful and influential. The man holding court at its head was Julian Thorne. Even if you didn't know his name, you instinctively knew his type. His suit was a custom-tailored shadow, impeccably cut to emphasize his lean physique and radiating an aura of understated power. His watch, a gleaming testament to Swiss craftsmanship, was undoubtedly worth more than her entire apartment building in Queens, and his eyes, a cold, almost glacial Arctic blue, seemed to possess the unsettling ability to never blink, to never betray a flicker of human emotion. He was the ruthless CEO and founder of Thorne Industries, a hydra-headed corporation that dealt in everything from global logistics and resource mining to cutting-edge emerging technologies. Flanking him were 2 equally formidable figures: David Chen, his sleek, unervingly silent legal counsel, whose presence exuded an aura of quiet menace, and Marcus Reed, a vice president whose entire personality seemed to consist of loud, almost obsequious agreement with whatever Thorne said. Amelia was meticulously refilling their water glasses, her movements fluid and practiced, honed by countless hours of repetition, when the conversation at the table took a decidedly intriguing turn. "Soloway is a dead end," Thorne declared, his voice a low, gravelly growl that seemed to vibrate with barely suppressed frustration. He slid a high-resolution tablet across the polished mahogany tabletop, the screen displaying a chaotic jumble of symbols and archaic lettering. "He's either a complete fraud or a spineless coward. He claims it's utterly unsolvable. He is the foremost expert in the field, Julian," Marcus offered weakly, clearly hesitant to contradict his boss, even in the slightest way. "He said the dialect is indeterminate. The dialect is a 15th-century Basque variant, heavily mixed with an alchemical cipher." "I know that, Marcus," Thorne snapped. his voice laced with undisguised disgust at the VP's perceived lack of insight. But the cipher is the goddamn key. Without it, the Weiner manuscript is just a pretty, utterly useless relic. And Aperture Global is breathing down my neck, closing in on the Pyrenees site. They're blind drilling, but they'll get lucky eventually. I need what's in this manuscript, and I need it now. Amelia froze. Her hand, still gripping the heavy water pitcher, paused almost imperceptibly for a fraction of a millisecond. 15th century Basque variant? Alchemical cipher? The Weiner manuscript? Couldn't possibly be. The Weiner manuscript was practically a myth, a mere footnote in an obscure text she'd stumbled across while researching for her abandoned dissertation. It was rumored to be the personal journal of a reclusive Rosicrucian alchemist who had encoded the location of something. Most academics dismissed it as an elaborate hoax, akin to the infamous Voynich manuscript, a beautifully illustrated but completely nonsensical book that had baffled scholars for centuries. But Amelia had always disagreed. She had even written a painstakingly researched 40-page paper arguing that the few available fragments suggested it wasn't a traditional language cipher at all, but rather a conceptual one. Not a simple A equals B, but something far more complex. A represented water, which in turn represented Mercury, which signified a critical shift in the following stanza. Thorne noticed her momentary hesitation, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Is there a problem, miss?" Amelia's face flushed crimson. "No, sir. My apologies." She resumed refilling his glass, her hands now trembling slightly. But Marcus, in his desperate haste to agree with his boss once again, gesticulated wildly, his arms sweeping across the table. "Julian, we can find someone else. We just need more time." His hand slammed squarely into Amelia's arm. The heavy pitcher didn't fall, but a cascade of ice water sloshed over the side, splashing onto the polished tabletop and, more disastrously, onto the priceless tablet. Time seemed to stop, the air thick with unspoken tension. Marcus looked utterly horrified, his face contorted in a grimace of pure panic. David Chun closed his eyes briefly, as if offering a silent prayer to some unknown deity. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her pale and clammy. "Sir, I am so sorry. You," Julian Thorne hissed, his voice dangerously quiet, like the low rumble of an impending avalanche. He snatched a napkin and began dabbing at the tablet, his icy blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to disappear. "You are clumsy. You are replaceable. Do you have any idea the value of the information you just spilled water on?" "Julian, it's fine. The device is waterproof," David Chin murmured, his voice calm and reassuring. "That's not the point, David." Thorne's gaze remained locked on Amelia, who was trembling uncontrollably, but also staring intently at the screen. The spilled water had, ironically, highlighted the digital script, making it even clearer. She could see it now, the precise script she had practically memorized during her years of research. She whispered a fragment of the text, an involuntary exhalation. "It's not elemental. It's astrological. The key is in the progression of Mars." The table went utterly, unnervingly silent. Amelia instinctively clapped a hand over her mouth, horrified at her own outburst. She hadn't meant to say it. It had been a purely academic reflex, a sudden eruption of years of suppressed knowledge. Marcus Reed snorted derisively. "What did you say?" Julian Thorne tilted his head slightly, his expression no longer one of anger, but rather of a strange, almost unsettling amusement. A dark, predatory amusement. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time that night, seeing past the starched uniform and the carefully neutral expression to the person beneath, the shy, trembling waitress. "What did you just say, little girl?" Amelia swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "Nothing, sir. I apologize. I'll get a towel." "No." He held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. He tapped the screen, zooming in on a particularly dense line of intricate, almost alien symbols. "You think you can read this? You, the waitress? What are you, some kind of history buff?" Did you take a community college class on the Da Vinci Code or something? Marcus laughed. A loud, almost braying sound that grated on Amelia's nerves. Amelia felt a spark, a tiny, cold spark of defiance that her habitual shyness usually managed to smother. The sheer arrogance of this man, the casual dismissal of something that was so profoundly important to her, ignited a long-dormant ember within her. He was mocking a subject that was quite literally her life's blood. "It's a Rosicrucian cipher," she said, her voice quiet but surprisingly clear, cutting through the tension in the air. "The mask is a blind, deliberately designed to misdirect the translator. The real text is hidden in the lunar phases marked in the margins. The V symbol isn't a V at all. It's the sign for Taurus, which means the corresponding passage represents a fixed earthly element. It's not a map, it's a formula." The silence that followed was absolute, almost deafening. David Chen's pen slipped from his fingers, clattering softly onto the table. Marcus's smile froze on his face and then slowly, painfully evaporated. Julian Thorne stared at her, his pupils wide and dilated, like a shark tasting blood in the water. He had no idea if she was right, but he knew with a chilling certainty that she believed she was right, and she had used words, phrases, and concepts that his so-called foremost expert hadn't even come close to uttering. He began to smile. It was not a kind smile. Well, a genius in our midst, a regular prodigy, hiding in plain sight, serving bread. He laughed again, a sharp, barking sound that made some of the other diners flinch. "All right, prodigy, let's make a deal." He tapped the tablet. "You're so smart. You translate this. Translate just this one page, right here, right now. You do it, and I'll give you $10 million. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. "But if you're wrong, if you're just wasting my time with your college girl fantasies, you're not just fired. I'll make sure you never serve another glass of water in this city again. I'll personally own your student debt. How about that?" It was a trap, a cruel public joke designed to humiliate her and force her to back down. He wanted her to cry, to flee, to disappear so he could return to his important business without further interruption. Amelia looked at the tablet, at the intricate script that now seemed to be dancing before her eyes, like music in her head. She thought of her sister's uncertain future, a grim, gray expanse of endless medical bills. She looked at Julian Thorne, a man who possessed everything and respected absolutely nothing. Her shyness was still there, a cold knot of anxiety in her stomach, but the burgeoning anger was warmer, almost comforting. "I don't have a pen," she said, her voice barely a whisper. David Chen, his face a carefully constructed mask of disbelief, slowly, almost mechanically, pulled a solid gold fountain pen from his breast pocket and held it out to her. Amelia took it, the weight of it strangely reassuring in her trembling hand. She reached for a clean linen napkin from the bread basket. "And the 10 million? I'll need that in writing." Julian Thorne's laughter echoed through the restaurant, drawing curious glances from the other patrons. "She's got spirit. I'll give her that," he roared, clearly amused. "Give her the damned pen. This is going to be the best $10 million I never spend." He slid the tablet in front of her, the glowing screen illuminating her face. "The floor is yours, prodigy. Silence me." The entire restaurant seemed to fade away. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, the soft jazz playing over the speakers. It all dissolved into a dull, distant hum. For Amelia, there was only the glowing screen of the tablet and the intricate, beautiful dance of the cipher. Her shyness, which had always felt like a lead weight in her stomach, didn't vanish entirely. Instead, it sublimated, transformed into something else. It was the same intense focus she'd always possessed, the state that made her shy and awkward in public but a fearless lioness in the hushed confines of the archives. It was the quiet focus of a deep-sea diver, descending into a world that no one else could reach. Julian Thorne watched her, his smirk still playing on his lips, fully expecting her to fail miserably. Marcus Reed was already furiously drafting a text message to his friends, regaling them with the story of the insane waitress. David Chun, the lawyer, watched with a quiet, unreadable intensity, his expression giving nothing away. Amelia picked up the heavy gold pen, its weight a stark contrast to the lightness of the tablet. She pulled the linen napkin closer, its starchy crispness a tactile reminder of the world she was about to leave behind. But she didn't write on the napkin. Not yet. She placed her finger on the screen and began to scroll, her eyes moving at a speed that defied casual reading, absorbing every detail. "You said 1 page," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "But you showed me the wrong page. The page you showed me, that's the appendix. It's just a list of sources. Useless." Julian's smirk twitched, a barely perceptible flicker of annoyance. "What? Your expert, Dr. Soloway," he started at the beginning. "He thinks this is a book. It's not. It's a laboratory journal." Her finger scrolled past intricate diagrams of stars and plants, her eyes scanning the text with laser-like precision. "He was trying to translate this line," she pointed, her finger hovering over a particularly dense passage of ciphered text. "He probably thought it meant, 'The Red King consumes the sun,' alchemical poetry. But he's wrong. He's missing the key." "And you have the key?" Julian said, his voice losing its mocking edge, replaced by a sharp, cold curiosity. "The key isn't in the text itself. It's in the border." She zoomed in on the intricate filigree at the edge of the digital page. To the naked eye, it was just decorative ornamentation. To Amelia, it was a data stream. "Here," she said, pointing to a specific detail within the filigree. "This leaf is the symbol for Veneris, Venus, and this star is Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio, an astrological placement. It means the entire cipher on this page is compromised. It's deliberately designed to be read incorrectly." "A booby trap," David Chun whispered, leaning in, his eyes gleaming with understanding. "Exactly," Amelia said, her confidence growing with each passing second. "An academic trap. The author wanted to filter out the uninitiated, those who were not worthy of the knowledge contained within. But if you apply the corrective, if you know that Venus in Scorpio means you must read every third word backwards and substitute all earth elements with their water counterparts, then the text changes." Julian Thorne was no longer smiling. He was leaning forward, his arctic blue eyes fixed intently on her face, his expression one of pure, predatory focus. "Do it," he commanded. Amelia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She looked at the line that Soloway had failed to translate, the line that had stumped the foremost expert in the field. She picked up the pen and began to write on the napkin, the gold nib gliding smoothly across the linen. "The original text," she said, her voice soft but sure, "appears to be Rex Rub Solemn, consume, it's Cineribus renactor. The Red King consumes the sun and is reborn from the ashes. Alchemical poetry." "Poetry," Marcus scoffed, trying to regain his footing, desperately clinging to his previous assessment. "But with the corrective," Amelia continued, ignoring him, "the real translation is, the iron sulfide, the Red King, requires a solar-based thermal reaction, consumes the sun. The resulting material, the ashes, is not a byproduct, but the catalyst itself." She didn't stop there. She moved to the next line and then the next, her hand flying across the linen napkin, translating the cryptic symbols with effortless grace. The flowery poetry melted away, replaced by cold, hard technical specifications. The sleeping shepherd wasn't a man. It was a dormant volcano. The water that weeps stone wasn't a magic spring. It was a petrifying waterfall, indicating a high concentration of specific minerals. She was translating a 15th century geological survey and a detailed guide to geothermal energy. And then she reached the final lines of the page. Her breath caught in her throat. She stopped writing, her hand frozen in midair. "What?" Julian demanded, his voice sharp and impatient. "What is it?" Amelia looked up from the napkin, her face pale and drawn. This is more than just a formula. It's a claim." She wrote the last 2 lines on the napkin, her hand trembling slightly. Subtom flet primos in term. She translated, her voice barely audible. Beneath the sleeping shepherd, where the water weeps stone, I lie, first among equals. This is mine. She looked directly at Julian Thorne, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. It's a deed. It's a 15th century legal declaration of ownership, predating any modern treaty. The author, the alchemist, was claiming the entire site, the volcano, the minerals, the geothermal source. He was claiming it all. The table was silent, the air thick with unspoken implications. The only sound was the distant clink of a fork against a plate from somewhere else in the vast restaurant. Julian Thorne stared at the napkin, at the lines she had so deftly translated. He looked at the precise, almost legal phrasing. Primus inter pares est. This was the weapon he needed, the key to unlocking a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. Aperture Global was drilling based solely on modern geological surveys and mineral assays. He was about to walk into court armed with a 500-year-old deed, a deed that his own expert had dismissed as utter nonsense poetry. He looked at David Chun, his legal counsel. David's face was ashen, his eyes wide with understanding. He was a lawyer. He understood exactly what this meant. This changed the entire game, transforming a simple resource race into a legal checkmate. Julian Thorne slowly, deliberately folded the linen napkin and slipped it into his breast pocket, right next to his $10,000 wallet. He looked at Amelia, his gaze piercing and unwavering. The transformation was complete. The air of predatory amusement had vanished, replaced by the chillingly neutral expression of a man performing a 9-figure calculation in his head. He saw the empty water glasses, the other diners, the potential for leaks and complications. He saw a liability. "Marcus," he said, not looking away from Amelia. "Pay the bill. All of it. The entire restaurant. Tell them it's a private celebration." "Sir?" Marcus squeaked, clearly taken aback by the unexpected order. "And David?" Thorne continued, his voice still flat and devoid of emotion. "Get the car and have Soloway's contract terminated, effective immediately, for cause. I want him blacklisted from every academic institution in the Western Hemisphere." David Chun nodded curtly, already dialing his phone as he stood, his movements precise and efficient. Marcus fumbled for his black credit card, his face a mask of confusion. In a matter of seconds, the two men were gone, leaving Amelia alone at the table with the billionaire. The restaurant was buzzing with a mixture of excitement and confusion as the maitre d' began informing the stunned patrons that their meals were compliments of Mr. Thorne. But at table 7, the world had shrunk to just 2 people. Julian leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Amelia. He didn't thank her, didn't praise her, didn't even acknowledge the monumental shift she had just engineered. He simply assessed her, as if she were a valuable piece of property he was considering acquiring. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice devoid of inflection. "Amelia Vance," she said, her voice sounding surprisingly stronger than she expected. "That's not what I asked. I was a doctoral candidate at Columbia. Paleography. My family, we had some trouble. I had to leave the program." "You speak 6 languages," he stated, his voice a flat pronouncement, not a question. 8, she corrected softly, if you count Old Norse and the alchemical variant of medieval Latin. Julian nodded slowly, as if this confirmed a private theory he'd been developing. "The wager," he said, his gaze unwavering. "The $10 million? Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs, threatening to burst from her chest. "Yes, that was a joke," he said flatly, his eyes like chips of ice. "A figure of speech. Public bombast. No sane court in the world would enforce it." Amelia's stomach dropped. Of course he would say that. He was a billionaire, he didn't lose. He didn't pay. But then he continued, holding up one finger, his expression unreadable. "The information you provided, that is not a joke. It is perhaps the most valuable single piece of data I have acquired this fiscal year." He steepled his fingers in front of him, his eyes boring into her. "So, Miss Vance, we have a problem. You have something I need. Not just what's on that napkin. You have the key to the rest of that 214-page manuscript. And I have your $10 million. He smiled. And this time it was all teeth. A predatory display that sent another shiver down her spine. Let's talk about your new employment. The restaurant Le Walder was in a state of confused celebration. Champagne was being sent to tables, compliments of Julian Thorne. The maitre d' Gerard, who had always looked at Amelia with a faint, lingering disapproval, was now practically bowing, assuming she had somehow charmed the notoriously difficult billionaire. But at table 7, the air was still frigid. The tension as thick as the overpriced cream sauce on the forgotten plates of pasta. "I'm not looking for a job, Mr. Thorne," Amelia said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking. "I'm looking for you to honor your wager." Julian let out a short, sharp sigh, as if dealing with a particularly recalcitrant child. "Ms. Vance, Amelia, let's be practical. If I cut you a check for $10 million right now, what's the first thing you think happens?" Amelia thought of her sister Clara, of the endless rounds of treatments and the crushing weight of her illness. "I'd pay for my sister's medical treatments. I'd pay off my student loans." "No," Julian interrupted, his voice flat and dismissive. "That's what you would do. I'm asking what happens. I'll tell you. The IRS happens. The SEC happens. They'll want to know why Thorne Industries just transferred 8 figures to a waitress. Then the press happens. Billionaire's bizarre bar bet. And then—" He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a barely audible whisper that sent a chill down her spine. "Aperture Global happens. My competitors, the people I am currently in a $100 billion shadow war with over this exact piece of land. They will see that payment and they will wonder why. They will find you, Miss Vance, and they are not as polite as I am. They will not offer you money. They will take the information. And when you've told them everything you know, you will become a loose end. A very, very permanent loose end." The blood in Amelia's veins turned to ice water. He was describing a world she knew existed, a world of corporate espionage and ruthless competition, but a world she had never, ever wanted to touch. "You're trying to scare me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm not trying," he said simply. "I'm informing you. That money paid in that way isn't freedom. It's a bullet. It's a target on your back and the back of—" "Who did you say? Your sister Clara?" Amelia flinched. He had heard. He had logged that name into his mental database. "So, here's my counteroffer," Julian continued, pulling a sleek black business card and his gold pen from his jacket. "You come and work for me, not as a waitress, but as a principal consultant. You will work directly with me. You will translate the rest of the Vayner manuscript. You will have access to resources you've only dreamed of. Our labs, our archives." He started writing on the back of the card, his pen moving with practiced efficiency. "I will give you a signing bonus of $1 million, tax-free, paid through a creative corporate structure. I will give you an annual salary of $500,000. And he pushed the card across the table towards her. "I will personally handle your sister's medical care. She will see the best doctors in the world at my expense. Whatever she needs, consider it done." He sat back, his gaze unwavering. "This is the offer. You get wealth. You get to do the work you were born to do. Your sister is safe. And, most importantly, you are under my protection. You're part of Thorne Industries. Untouchable." Amelia looked at the card, her mind racing. It was an ironclad, beautiful cage, gilded with the promise of wealth and security. He was offering her everything she'd ever wanted: financial security, her sister's health, a return to the academic work she loved. But the price was her freedom. The price was him. "And my silence," Amelia said, her voice barely a whisper. "And your silence," Julian agreed, nodding slowly. "That is non-negotiable. You will sign an NDA so thick it could stop a bullet. You will not speak of the manuscript, the translation, or this night to anyone, ever. And the 10 million? The 10 million was a joke," he said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "This," he tapped the card, "is reality. The joke is over. Amelia stared at the card, her thoughts in turmoil. She saw her sister's face, pale and drawn. She saw the crushing weight of her debt, threatening to pull her under. She saw the faceless men from Aperture Global that Thorne had conjured in her imagination, their eyes cold and calculating. "You're not giving me a choice," she said, her voice barely audible. "No," Julian agreed, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not. If I say no." Julian's eyes went flat, devoid of all emotion. "Then you are just a waitress who spilled water on me. I will have you fired. You will go home to your debts and your sick sister, and Aperture Global will eventually find that site one way or another. Or I might just leak to a friendly reporter that a certain former Columbia student has a fascinating theory about the Vayner manuscript. Aperture will find you by breakfast. Your choice, Miss Vance. The cage with the golden bars, or the one with the wolves?" He glanced at his watch. 2 minutes. That's how long I'm giving you. He picked up his water glass and watched her, his gaze unwavering, like a predator patiently observing its prey. Amelia's mind was racing, desperately searching for a way out. He had planned for every contingency. He had analyzed her, found her weaknesses, her sister, her debt, her hidden ambition, and weaponized them against her. But he had missed one crucial detail. He had assumed her shyness was weakness. He had assumed her intellect was purely academic, confined to the dusty pages of ancient texts. He hadn't realized that the same mind that could decode a 15th century cipher could also decode a 21st century predator. She recognized his strategy. Isolate, intimidate, acquire. He was trying to buy a priceless artifact, her brain, for pennies on the dollar. The $1 million offer was an insult, a pittance measured against the $100 billion prize at stake. "No," she said, her voice shaking but firm. Julian Thorne's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. It was the first truly human emotion he had shown all night. "No," Amelia repeated, pushing the business card back across the table, her resolve hardening with each passing second. "That's not the deal. I assure you it is." "It's a bad deal," Amelia said, her voice still trembling, but her eyes now blazing with a newfound determination. "You're right about the danger. You're right about my sister. You've left me no choice but to work with you. But you're wrong about the terms." She took a deep breath, preparing to gamble everything. "You don't just need a translator, Mr. Thorne. You need an interpreter. You need the one person on the planet who truly understands this manuscript. You think it's a map. It's not. You think it's a deed. It's more. That formula I translated. It's not for a mineral. It's for a process. Process I'm not even sure I understand yet. Without me, you'll drill in the right place and find nothing. You'll be no better than Aperture." Julian was listening now, his face as hard and unyielding as granite. "So, here's my counteroffer," Amelia said, channeling every ounce of negotiating power she didn't know she possessed. "You will honor the wager, the $10 million, not as a joke, but as my signing bonus, because that was the price you set. It will be paid as a retainer, through a legal framework that Mr. Chun can draft to protect me from the very wolves you're sicking on me." "And the salary?" he asked, his voice a dangerous purr. "I don't want your salary," Amelia said, her gaze unwavering. "Salaries are for employees. You're not hiring me, Mr. Thorne. You're partnering with me. I want a percentage." Julian actually laughed, a genuine burst of incredulity. "A percentage of Thorne Industries? Don't be ridiculous." Amelia snapped, the uncharacteristic sharpness of her tone surprising them both. "A percentage of the find, of the project. Whatever this manuscript leads to, I want a piece of it. A real binding legal piece. And my sister's medical care. That's not a perk, Mr. Thorne. That is condition number 1. She stood up, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. But she stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "You have my terms. You have 24 hours to have Mr. Chun draft the contract. You can find me, well, you know where I work." She turned to leave. "You're fired." She stopped, her back to him, her shoulders tense. "Gerard." Julian called out, his voice echoing through the restaurant. The maitre d' came running, his face etched with concern. Miss Vance will be leaving. Her employment here is terminated, effective immediately. She bothered me. Gerard looked utterly horrified, his eyes darting between Amelia and Julian. Amelia stopped at Amelia's. Miss Vance, gather your belongings. You are dismissed in disgrace. Amelia closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable. It was a final, petty display of power from Julian. Turning, she fixed Julian Thorne with a steely gaze. You've just made a grave error, she stated, her voice resonating with unwavering conviction. Oh, Julian countered, raising a skeptical brow. Is dismissing you the mistake? No, Amelia retorted, her eyes flashing. Allowing me to leave this establishment. She swept past her stunned colleagues and the baffled diners, the weight of their stares pressing upon her. As she pushed through the heavy glass doors of Le Walled Door, Amelia was no longer a disgraced waitress. She had been reborn as a free agent, and her declaration of war reverberated in the very air. The cool night air of the Upper East Side crashed against Amelia like a wave. One moment she was suffocating in the pressurized bubble of Le Walled Door. The next, she was ejected onto the sidewalk, still clad in her apron, her ears ringing with the echoes of the confrontation. Unemployed, she had insulted one of the world's most influential figures and gambled her entire future, and her sisters, on a 500-year-old manuscript. Her bravery instantly deserted her, replaced by stark, unadulterated panic. What had she done? With a forceful rip, she tore off the apron and crammed it into a nearby public trash can, a small act of rebellion. She began the long trek toward the subway, each step a heavy reminder of her precarious situation. A cab was a luxury she could no longer afford. Not now, not ever. Her tiny pre-war walk-up in Astoria, Queens, was a world apart from the rarefied atmosphere she had just left. As the N train rumbled onward, the faces around her were etched with fatigue, worry, and the burden of reality. This was her world. The world of mounting student debt, crippling medical copays, and the constant, dull ache of unfulfilled potential. When she reached her apartment, the lights were already on. Hope surged through her. Clara? She called out, fumbling with her keys. Her younger sister was on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale yet brightened by a smile. Ames, you're late. How was your evening in the land of obscene wealth? Clara was a painter, her spirit vibrant and sharp, her artistic eye unyielding. Her illness, a rare and debilitating autoimmune disorder, had only honed her wit. It was the treatments that dulled her brilliance, and the astronomical costs of those treatments that were crushing Amelia's spirit. You know, Amelia said, forcing a smile, trying to project a sense of normalcy. Same as always, rich people complaining about the temperature of their soup. You look different, Clara observed, her artist's gaze missing nothing. Like you've either seen a ghost, kissed a prince, or battled a dragon. Or fought a dragon, Amelia muttered under her breath. She sank onto the sofa, her body finally registering the adrenaline crash. She wanted to confide in Clara, to tell her about facing down a billionaire, about translating the Vayner manuscript, about the potential for everything to change. But she couldn't. Thorne's veiled threat, a target on your back and your sister's, echoed in her mind. Her silence was Clara's only shield. Just a long night, Claire. I think I got fired. Clara sat up, her smile vanishing. Ames, what? Why? I spilled water on a very, very important person. He was a jerk. It's fine. I'll find something else. Oh, Ames? Clara's eyes welled up with tears, the kind Amelia hated most. The I'm a burden tears. No, Amelia said fiercely, her voice filled with unwavering resolve. Stop that. It's not fine, but I am. I'm going to fix this. I promise you. She settled Clara, made her some tea, and waited until her sister's breathing was deep and even. Then, and only then, did Amelia retreat to her own room. Sleep evaded her. Instead, she went to her desk, a flimsy particle board structure, and logged into her old Columbia University portal. Her access was miraculously still active, a clerical oversight. She typed in Vayner J. Soloway. Dr. Soloway, the esteemed expert, Julian Thorne's own expert. Amelia recognized the name. She located his doctoral thesis, and a chilling dread washed over her. His entire thesis was devoted to the Vayner manuscript, and it was fundamentally flawed, utterly amateurishly wrong. He had fallen victim to the very trap the alchemist had set, succumbing to the astrological deception. His entire career was built on a mistranslation. But that wasn't the truly terrifying part. In his acknowledgments, he thanked his primary funding source, Aperture Global. Thorne's expert wasn't merely incompetent. He was a spy. He wasn't simply failing to translate the manuscript for Thorne. He was actively mistranslating it, feeding Thorne false data while Aperture was secretly drilling in the correct location. But they were drilling in the wrong spot, Thorne had stated, which meant Soloway didn't even know he was wrong. He couldn't decipher it. He was a fraud working for Aperture as stuck as Thorne. Amelia's mind reeled. This was far more complex than a mere professional rivalry. It was an intricate web of corporate espionage, and she was the unsuspecting fly blundering into its center. A distinct sound, a click. Amelia froze. Her old apartment often creaked and groaned, but this was different. It came from her front door, the telltale sound of a lock being tested. She crept from her room, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She peered through the peephole. The hallway appeared empty. She was imagining things, succumbing to paranoia. Thorne had gotten inside her head. She retreated to her room, but the fear lingered, a cold, palpable presence. She checked the locks on her window, and as she glanced down at the street 4 stories below, she saw him. A man standing across the street. He wasn't in a car. He stood beneath a streetlight, dressed in a nondescript dark suit. He was looking up, not at her building, but directly at her window. He saw her move. He didn't try to hide. He simply tilted his head in acknowledgement. This wasn't one of Thorne's men. Thorne's men would be obvious, hulking ex-military types designed to intimidate. This man was different. He was a shadow. The kind of man who followed you unnoticed, eavesdropped on your calls, tested your locks. He was Aperture. Julian Thorne had been right. The wolves were indeed circling, and they had found her before breakfast. Her phone buzzed, causing her to gasp. It was an unknown number, a text message. Your 24 hours are up, Ms. Vance, but the terms have changed. You are no longer a potential asset. You are a liability. There is a car waiting 2 blocks away at the corner of 30th and 34th Avenue. You have 5 minutes to be in it. If you are not in that car, I will assume you have accepted a counteroffer, and I will act accordingly. It was unsigned, but it didn't need to be. Thorne had fired her to leave her adrift, to make her vulnerable, to let the wolves find her, to demonstrate precisely what she had rejected. He was showing her, in real time, the choice: the gilded cage or the wolves' den. But he had miscalculated. He thought he was revealing the wolves, but he had also revealed their location. He had confirmed the man on the street wasn't his. Amelia grabbed her laptop, then the file on Soloway. She texted back, "I'm not coming to you. You're coming to me. New York Public Library, Bryant Park. 1 hour. Come alone, or your expert, Dr. Soloway, will have a very interesting conversation with the SEC and Aperture Global's board. Your choice." She hit send, grabbed her keys and sneakers. She glanced at Clara, still sleeping peacefully. "I will fix this," she whispered. She slipped out the back exit of her building, a fire escape she had never before used. The man on the street didn't even see her go. The timid waitress was gone. The game had begun. The Rose Main reading room of the New York Public Library was a cathedral of silence, a vast, cavernous space where the only sounds were the gentle rustling of turning pages and the soft tapping of keyboards. The soaring ceiling was adorned with murals of ethereal clouds. It was a public space, yet one that commanded reverence. Amelia chose it for a reason. It was public, a sanctuary in plain sight, brightly lit and full of potential witnesses. The enforced silence meant there would be no shouting, no bombast. as Julian had termed it. Here, they would be forced to whisper, and in a whisper war, Amelia knew her quiet intensity gave her a significant advantage. She chose a seat at one of the long oak tables, positioning herself with her back against a solid wall. She had arrived 30 minutes early, carefully observing the entrances. And then she saw him arrive. Julian Thorne in this setting looked like a panther stalking through a monastery. He was a creature of steel and glass, and the old-world wood and brass seemed to repel him. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit, but no tie. He wasn't here for pleasure. He was alone, as she had demanded. He scanned the room, his eyes, so accustomed to commanding boardrooms, now having to search for her. She didn't wave or signal. She simply watched him. His eyes finally locked onto hers. He offered no smile, just moved toward her, his walk a predator's glide. He sat down directly opposite her. A librarian, a stern-looking woman with glasses, immediately approached. "Sir, I'm sorry, but there's no talking in this section." Julian Thorne turned his attention to the woman, likely unaccustomed to being shushed by anyone. He appeared poised to perhaps by the library when Amelia swiftly interjected. "It's all right," Amelia whispered, her voice perfectly suited for the room. "He's my tutor. We're working on a translation." The librarian gave Julian a skeptical glance, but was appeased by Amelia's academic demeanor. She nodded curtly and retreated. Julian fixed Amelia with a stare. A slow, dangerous smile played on his lips. "A tutor. Very clever, Miss Vance. You've been busy." "I found your wolf," Amelia whispered, cutting to the chase. "The man outside my apartment, not yours. Aperture. You set me up." "I gave you a choice," Julian whispered back, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "You chose poorly. You were supposed to be frightened. You were supposed to call me, begging for the cage. Instead, I found this." She slid her laptop across the table and angled the screen toward him. On the display was Dr. Soloway's thesis. Julian glanced at it dismissively. "Soloway, my failed expert. He's irrelevant." "He's not your expert. He's theirs," Amelia whispered, emphasizing each word. "His entire doctoral thesis was funded by a shell corporation that traces back to Aperture Global's R&D division." Julian's eyes narrowed. He scanned the acknowledgement page, his jaw visibly tightening. The panther was coiling, preparing to strike. "He's a mole," Julian stated, his voice devoid of inflection. It wasn't a question. "He's a fraud," Amelia corrected, "and a spectacularly bad one. He's been feeding you flawed translations because he can't decipher the manuscript. He's just as stuck as you are. He's been advising you to drill in the Eastern Quadrant, hasn't he? Because he mistranslates Occidentum as hidden instead of west." Julian's silence was all the confirmation she needed. He had been pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into drilling in the wrong location, all based on the word of a rival spy. The intensity of his fury was palpable, a cold heat radiating across the table. "So," Julian whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm, "you've proven you're intelligent. You've proven my entire intelligence division is incompetent. What exactly do you want?" Amelia refused to let him see her fear, nor allow him the satisfaction to rub his nose in it. "I want a new deal," Amelia said, her voice unwavering. "We had a deal. 5 million and your sister's life. That deal is off the table." "That was the deal you offered the waitress," Amelia countered. "You're now negotiating with the only person on Earth who can save your $100 billion project from your own spy." She took a deep breath. "Here are the new terms, and they are non-negotiable." She slid a piece of paper across the table, having meticulously written them down. 1. $10 million paid in full by wire transfer within 24 hours, not as a retainer, but as a consulting fee for services already rendered. My silence on Soloway. Mr. Chun can construct the legal fortress. I don't care how. That's his concern. 2. My sister's medical care, all of it effective immediately. She is to be transferred to the Shepherd Center under the care of Dr. Harris Thorne, your top specialist. Julian's head snapped up, his expression momentarily betraying his surprise. Dr. Harris Thorne was his reclusive, brilliant cousin, the one positive association with the Thorne family name. "How do you know about—" "I do my research," Amelia whispered, her eyes unwavering. "I'm not the only intelligent member of my family. 3. I don't want a salary. I don't want to be your partner. I am a consultant. You will pay me a fee of $100,000 per translated page. There are 213 pages remaining." Julian's eyes widened. He was about to protest. $21,300,000. Amelia stated, doing the math for him. "A bargain considering what's at stake, and it's per page. You get the translation, I get the payment. A straightforward transaction. No percentage, no partnership. 4. I do not work for Thorne Industries. I work at Thorne Industries as an independent contractor. I will require a secure lab, a full security detail, and 24/7 access to the manuscript's digital files. My security detail will report to me, not your head of security. Their sole purpose is to protect me from Aperture, and if necessary, from you." Julian leaned back, his gaze fixed on the paper, then on Amelia. He remained completely silent for a full minute. The only sound was the rustling of a page by a librarian 2 tables away. He was calculating, $10 million, $21. $3 million security, medical, a total of perhaps $35 million. "That's a considerable sum for a tutor," he finally whispered. "It's a rounding error compared to what you're about to gain," Amelia countered. "And it's the price for your failures. You failed to see Soloway. You failed to recognize the manuscript's true value. You failed to see me. My price is high because your mistakes are costly." A slow smile spread across Julian Thorne's face. It was the first genuine, non-predatory smile she had witnessed. A smile of pure, unadulterated respect. The smile of one apex predator recognizing another. "You're a monster, Ms. Vance," he whispered. "I'm a linguist," she whispered back. "And I'm protecting my sister." "My security detail," he countered, pointing to item 4. "They will report to me. That is non-negotiable. I cannot have an independent army operating within my own building. I will protect you, but I will do it my way." Amelia paused, considering the compromise. It was a critical point, but he had a valid concern. It was his fortress. "Fine," she conceded. "But I want Harris." "Harris? The man on your security detail, the one who is ex-Mossad, the one who actually saw the man from Aperture. He's intelligent. The other one, Lang, is a meathead. I want Harris as my personal detail." Julian was visibly stunned. "How in God's name do you know the names of my security team?" "I told you," Amelia said, beginning to pack up her laptop. "I do my research." Julian Thorne erupted in laughter. A quiet, terrifying, shoulders-shaking laugh, which he muffled into his hand to avoid attracting the librarian's attention. "This is going to be entertaining," he whispered, his eyes gleaming with a newfound, dangerous light. He picked up the piece of paper. "Have Mr. Chun wait." "No. You go to Mr. Chun. He's in the car. He's been there the entire time. You didn't think I came alone, did you?" Julian scoffed. "Of course not. Give this to David. Tell him to make it iron. He'll understand what that means." Amelia paused, adding, "And Amelia, welcome to Thorne Industries." The following 4 weeks were a whirlwind. Amelia was extracted from her old existence as swiftly as a painful tooth extraction. One day she was residing in a crumbling Astoria walk-up. The next she found herself in a sterile, ultramodern penthouse apartment on the 80th floor of the Thorne Tower, connected by a private elevator to her new lab on the 79th. Her lab was less a lab and more of a fortress. The walls were a foot thick, the glass bulletproof, and the air meticulously filtered. Her security, led by the quiet, watchful Harris, was absolute. Clara was transferred to the Shepherd Center, and for the first time in years, Amelia witnessed color returning to her sister's cheeks. The overwhelming sense of gratitude and relief almost made her forget she was living in a gilded cage. And the work was pure bliss. The Vayner manuscript, in its complete, digitized 214-page glory, was far more than just a journal. It was a labyrinth of knowledge. The alchemist, a 15th-century genius named Alardus, had encoded a new form of science. Amelia's initial translation had been accurate, but it was only the surface layer. The geothermal energy she had detected was far more than just heat. Alardus had discovered a unique geological formation within the Pyrenees Mountains where certain minerals, when subjected to specific geothermal pressures, created a self-sustaining, clean energy reaction. It wasn't just a mine. It was a battery, a perpetual planet-scale battery. The deed wasn't for the land itself, but for the process it contained. She worked 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in her lab, fueled by coffee and the thrill of discovery. She transmitted her translations to Julian page by page, and as she did, the wire transfers materialized in her account, $100,000. Her bank account, which had once flatlined, now resembled a telephone number. A strange, sterile partnership developed between her and Julian Thorne. He would appear in her lab at 3 a.m., his suit rumpled, his eyes burning with a near-manic energy. "Page 47, he would growl. "The silver serpent. Is it a river? Is it a metaphor for Mercury? It's an aqueduct." Amelia would reply, never lifting her gaze from the screen. "He constructed an aqueduct inside the volcano to channel the petrifying mineral water. He's using it to build the reaction chamber." Julian would simply stare at her, awestruck. He built it 500 years ago. He was a visionary. He was a genius, Amelia would say. "And you're about to exploit his work." "It's not exploitation, Ms. Vance," Julian would retort, pouring himself a coffee. "It's honoring him. We are the only two people alive who truly understand what he accomplished. We are his rightful heirs." This was the new dynamic. He had begun to address her as Amelia, using the word we. Amelia remained Ms. Vance, maintaining a careful distance. But it was a struggle. He was the only person with whom she could share her insights. He was brilliant, ruthless, and he regarded her as an equal. The shyness persisted, but her confidence, born from her work, served as a shield. Then David Chen arrived, the quiet, sleek legal counsel who had drafted her contract, a masterpiece of legal protection, and whom she hadn't seen since. He appeared at her lab door one evening, his face grim. Harris, her bodyguard, tensed, ready to defend her. "I have a meeting with Ms. Vance," David stated. "It's not on the schedule," Harris replied, his voice firm. "It's all right, Harris," Amelia said, waving him off. "Mr. Chun is family." David entered, and the door hissed shut behind him. He surveyed the walls, covered in Amelia's notes, diagrams, and translated scripts. "He's going to betray you," David said, his voice flat and emotionless. Amelia stopped writing, her heart pounding. "What? The contract? It's airtight. Your payments are secure, but you're missing the larger scheme. You're translating the how to build it, how to activate it. Thorne isn't just a miner. He's a corporate raider." He pointed to a financial terminal that Julian had installed. "He's not just planning to construct this, he's planning to conceal it." He paused. "He's creating a new shell corporation, Vance Geothermal." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. "He named it after me?" It was a strange, unsettling sensation. "He named it after you because it's going to fail," David said. "He's going to pour all the initial investment into it. He'll secure the patents under that name, and then he's going to let it become mired in regulatory red tape. He will publicly declare the Vayner project a geological impossibility. The stock will crash to zero. But why? He'd lose billions." "No," David said, his eyes dark. "He'd lose paper. And then a second, unknown, privately held company, a vulture fund, will swoop in and acquire all of Vance Geothermal's assets. The patents, the land, your translations, for pennies on the dollar. He'll take the company private, cutting out all his initial investors, the board, and you. He'll own 100% of the greatest energy discovery in human history, and you'll be left with your $30 million, which, to him, is the cost of a paperclip. He's not just stealing from Malardus. He's stealing from his own shareholders. Amelia sank into a chair, feeling nauseous. He's using my name. He's using my work, and he's going to cheat the world. She looked up at David. Why? Why are you telling me this? David Chun walked to the window, gazing down at the city 79 floors below. Julian Thorne is a predator, he said, his voice low and controlled. My father built a small tech company in the 90s. Thorne acquired it, a friendly acquisition. He leveraged my father's debt, forced him out, and bankrupted him. He paused. My father died 6 months later of a heart attack. He was 49. Amelia's blood ran cold. I went to law school on a scholarship, David continued. I made myself the best. I secured a position at the firm that represented Thorne. I made myself indispensable. For 15 years, I have been his loyal, silent counsel. I have been waiting for the one opportunity that could destroy him, the one thing he couldn't control. He turned to face her. You, Miss Vance, you are that thing. What do you want? Amelia whispered. I want to ruin him, the way he ruined my father. David sighed. The twist is, I'm not just his counsel, David said. I'm also a silent informant for Aperture Global. Amelia's world tilted. You were the real mole, not Soloway? Soloway was a useful idiot, David said. I'm the one who fed his name to Thorne. I knew he was a fraud. I was counting on him failing to slow Julian down, to make him reckless. And then you walked in, the magnificent, impossible variable. You handed me the weapon on a silver platter. He pulled a small, encrypted hard drive from his pocket. Aperture doesn't know the full truth. They just know Thorne possesses a key. They are desperate. They are prepared to pay far more than Thorne. They will give you everything he promised, plus 50% of the new venture in binding stock. You will become the richest woman on the planet. And you? I get my pound of flesh. I get to watch his empire burn. All you have to do, Amelia, is give me the real translation. The final pages, the activation sequence you're working on. Give it to me and we'll give it to Aperture. Thorne will be ruined. We both win. He placed the drive on her desk. You're a linguist. You understand the power of words, the power to build and the power to destroy. He left her alone in the lab. The silence was deafening. She was trapped. Trapped between Julian, the predictable, charming, ruthless shark, and David, the patient, grieving, vengeful viper. One sought to possess the world. The other sought to destroy it. And she was just the translator, the key, and both were prepared to destroy her to achieve their goals. Amelia didn't sleep. She saw the trap set by David as well as the trap set by Julian. And she decided to spring her own. She was no longer a pawn. She was a queen. At 10 p.m., the Waldor was dark. Just as she'd meticulously planned, Amelia sat poised at table 7. The dim lighting cast long shadows, adding an air of intrigue to the already tense atmosphere. David Chun arrived precisely on time, a bead of sweat already visible on his brow. Flanking him was the formidable Eleanor Hayes, CEO of Aperture Global, her face an unreadable mask. Miss Vance, Eleanor stated, her voice sharp and businesslike. Let's cut to the chase. You have what we discussed. The complete translation? Amelia met her gaze, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Confirmed, she replied smoothly, sliding a sleek, small black hard drive across the polished tabletop. The activation sequence, the algorithms, the whole enchilada. My terms remain firm. 50%. As Eleanor's manicured fingers reached for the drive, a blinding flash of light ripped through the restaurant. The sudden illumination revealed Julian Thorne stepping out from the deepest shadows, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. Simultaneously, his expertly trained security team materialized from seemingly nowhere, their presence radiating quiet menace. Aperture, Julian purred, his voice laced with amusement. So glad you could make it. I've been expecting you. The color drained from David's face, leaving him ashen. Amelia, you set me up. He accused, his voice barely a whisper. Amelia's expression remained cool, detached. No, David, she corrected, her voice laced with steel. You set yourself up. I did the research, the due diligence. You didn't. Aperture ruined your father, remember? And David Thorne wasn't the one responsible. You've been a puppet for the wrong master this entire time. A useful idiot. Turning her attention to Eleanor, Amelia delivered the final blow. And you, Ms. Hayes, have just accepted a hard drive containing Dr. Soloway's fake thesis. It's loaded with a rather nasty virus that's currently notifying the SEC and several other regulatory bodies of this lovely, clandestine meeting. I believe the legal term is trespassing to commit corporate espionage. Julian's men moved with practiced efficiency, escorting the stunned Aperture team and the utterly broken David Chun out of the building. The only sound left was the clinking of silverware. A profound silence descended upon the restaurant, broken only by the soft jazz playing on the speakers. It was just Amelia and Julian now. That, Julian breathed, her eyes wide with admiration, was spectacular. Textbook, really. We're not finished yet, Amelia said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. She slid a fresh document across the table, the crisp paper rustling softly. My final terms, Julian. Vance Geothermal goes public, and I am the CEO. 10% equity, non-negotiable. My sister, Clara, will run the foundation. Julian stared at her, his expression unreadable. And the translation, the key to unlocking Soloway's work? Where is it? Amelia stood, her gaze unwavering. She tapped her temple meaningfully. It's all in here. You'll get it when my contract is signed, sealed, and delivered. Julian Thorne stared at the woman who had, with breathtaking audacity, checkmated everyone in the room, including him. He threw his head back and roared with laughter, the sound echoing through the now empty restaurant. CEO it is, Miss Vance. CEO it is. In the end, it wasn't about the $10 million she'd initially been offered. It was about the immeasurable price of being underestimated, of being dismissed as just a waitress. Amelia Vance started her night serving bread and ended it as the CEO of a revolutionary company poised to reshape the world. She proved that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, the one with the most to prove. She didn't just find her voice. She unearthed her power and wielded it with ruthless precision to change the world. What's the hidden talent you're sitting on right now? What potential lies dormant within you, waiting to be unleashed? This story serves as a potent reminder that you should never, ever judge a book by its cover, or a waitress by her apron. If you loved this story of high-stakes drama, intricate twists, and sweet, sweet revenge, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel. And if you're new here, subscribe and ring that bell. We drop stories like this every week, and you definitely don't want to miss what happens next. Finally, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own inherent power. Leave a comment below. What would you have done with the $10 million? Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.